Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday. It's beginning to look a lot like Sainsbury's. It's my favourite tune. I always sing Sainsbury's in there. Other supermarkets are available. I don't know. I have done since a kid. I just feel like the supermarkets kind of determine Christmas for me. Do you know what I mean?
August.
In August, yeah. And
I think I saw some Easter stuff. I saw some Easter stuff in the range.
Wow. They haven't even bothered to get rid of Christmas yet.
I
started on Easter.
Christmas, I find trying to shop for normal stuff at Christmas really annoying because they scale everything down to make way for everything.
And right. What you mean? Yeah, they move everything around in the shop.
No, they've got less. Of course, they've got less, haven't they? Because there's only so much space in the shop, and it's just really frustrating when you're like, I just want normal stuff.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn the heating off there for a minute because I'm getting warm.
I've got two
on. That's a really, really valid point, and let's just talk about that very briefly for a minute, because I think it's particularly difficult when you've got, and I found it more difficult since we've had a child that is neurodiverse, and I'll tell you why. Is because and when we went on our ADHD stroke autism course recently, which the local council does, which was very good. One of the interesting things that came out of it was kind of a shared experience from all of the parents, is that most children with ADHD have a very particular sense of what they want to eat. Most of it very bland, very, very beige. Not a lot of different textures in there, because a lot of them have kind of got sort of sensory issues as well, and that's when the Christmas comes and they start putting all the Christmas food in. Trying to find the bland stuff that you normally buy every week is really difficult. So you're being quite exclusive, all of you shops, and you're not being very inclusive at Christmas time by putting all of this Christmas stuff out.
I struggled to try and find ham the other day because they had all of the other Christmas ham and all this kind of stuff.
Just normal ham.
All my shopping took longer to do because I was trying to find, and then I live with the Grinch as well, who's 16, who really, well, I joke. I joke. He doesn't really do Christmas, and it's funny because some people say they create the magic, like you can create the magic. But I think he's very like me. I don't like forced fun at all. And so for me, Christmas doesn't last 2 months. We used to put our Christmas decorations up the day before Christmas Eve, I think. So that's what my mum did. And as the years have got on, the peer pressure has meant they want the decorations earlier. And it sort of now feels like it's become like a bit of it has to be done by that time. But it's interesting with Samuel because he's autistic. And for him, he's like, I just don't get what it's all about. I don't
really.
And very much you can see that it's very much that he said everybody forces you this, and it's true. Every time I get in the car, I'm sure Mariah Carey is waiting and Leona Lewis, because the two of them, every time I get in the car, their songs are on, and it's just this constant Christmas song.
Well, interesting. We've been listening to the Christmas music channel on the radio in the car.
He'd love that.
and actually, I've heard very little Mariah and absolutely no Leona Lewis this year.
Every time.
There you go. Perhaps you ought to tune into the Christmas channel, because they're not playing it. They're not.
No, I have to listen to Ghost. Whenever someone gets in the car, Ghost comes on.
Okay. Ghosts are a band, by the way, folks, on the sort of heavier side of things, for anybody that
I'm going to see them with them.
Very good indeed. I'm not going to see Mariah Carey. Just put that out there as well. For anybody that wants to know,
I have done Christmas though. I have put a Christmas top on.
Well done. Yeah, you see, look, there is some Christmas spirit there, and I have got some. I've got some snowflakes as well in the background, and some little twinkle lights as well. Now, listen, when it comes to that, I am going to say this: I would actually happily have Christmas every single day. I wish it could be Christmas every single day, but I mean that's a fantasy land, isn't it? Really, I mean it would be nice if everything slowed down for one day and we all lived a slightly
but it doesn't though.
But no, Christmas Day itself, it does well, it does here, right? Because we only do Christmas days as us as a family. We get up really late, we go real slow, we don't just like rush to do anything or whatever, and it's almost like time slows down on Christmas Day. It's all the lead up to Christmas Day. Now you see, that's what you don't want, but Christmas Day itself would be fine. That's fine. I quite happily sort of get up at.
We used to have spaghetti bolognese and pizza on Christmas Day, and we used to have Christmas dinner on Boxing Day because my cousins used to come.
There you go.
And I love it because it shouldn't be like I would have beans on toast or something or other, because that is the one day that it should be nothing.
That's it. Right, we're going to welcome our guest, who's going to bring some more Christmas spirit, maybe, to the proceedings. This is the wonderful Charlotte. Nice to meet you.
Good morning. I don't really know where to start, Graham. The fact that you're not going to actually see Mariah Carey, the Christmas jumper, and the Christmas spirit. The fact that I have neither.
Yeah, but you're wearing green and lovely pink. That actually looks quite Christmassy, I think.
Yeah, this is
just my favourite colour on your lips.
Well, it's Christmas every day then. So, yeah.
I have done some gigs recently. I went to see the wonderful Berries not so long ago. And hi, folks. And last week or the week before, it might have been the week before. I can't remember now. It's all a bit of a blur lately. No, that's another band day. I went to see the amazing Shed 7, supported by the Sherlocks. That was fantastic. Absolutely brilliant.
You've lost me on a lot of that. I'm afraid I'm an old school 90s raver.
Are you?
Yeah.
I actually went to a club night at our town hall on Friday. We had all of the. It was Brandon Block. Who else did I say it was? Brandon Block and somebody else as well. Yeah,
Seb,
up on the stage.
Seb, wasn't it?
Who?
Seb
Fontaine.
Oh, my friend won't come and see Seb Fontaine. He's playing in Cardiff, and we've just been to see Lisa Lashes, and she was amazing. Although I have to say,
I met her.
Oh, well, I did 44,000 steps that day, and I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning because it was a day rave. My ankles didn't feel like that in my 20s. And I'm off to see Paul van Dyk, who is my all-time fave. Well, I remember him as being my all-time favourite, whether he is, but Seb Fontaine was my second. And my friend literally told me 20 years later, didn't really like him. I was like, we went all the time. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm a 90s rave, bit of 90s R&B, and my son's a proper muso and loves going to see live music. He's into like the Courtneyers and Oasis and that kind of stuff. But I am not.
No, I inhabited both of those worlds.
Yeah.
I was in a band in the 90s, etc. And then latterly at the early 2000s, I helped run a club night in London.
Oh, so, I feel like maybe, Graham, I should have Googled you and found that out. Is that like, am I talking to somebody super famous that I've completely like let wash over my head?
You're not talking to someone super famous.
You're going to come back and go that you were as famous.
I talk to people who are super famous, but I certainly not in my own lunchtime. I'm
exactly. We all are.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's a little bit famous. So, Charlotte, tell us a little bit more about you.
So, I always think I don't sound Welsh, but I'm sure some of you may have picked up on the
Welsh.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm from Cardiff. So, I live down in Wales with my husband and my kids, who are not really kids anymore. They're 22 and 17. I'm a business owner and fierce advocate of challenging crappy practice. Hope, yeah, that's okay. I didn't think to check whether I could spare. And I think that's where Marianne and I chatting is our probably united feel for just mediocrity, I always call it. But that's kind of where this has come about. But yeah, I would say there's lots to me, but really you've probably heard the most of it. I'm a parent, I'm a business owner, and I love to rave. So that's as deep as I get.
That's fine. You passed the test. You've got the t-shirt. Now, in terms of you say in terms of mediocrity and practice or whatever, give us some examples. What sort of areas are you talking about in particular?
So my professional background is in the drug and alcohol space. So I've worked, I started way back when as a licensee, and spent a lot of time clubbing, so been around drugs and alcohol for a really long time. I'm going to caveat that with I don't have lived experience, but found myself falling into that kind of space. And fast forward, I've been saying 20 years, but I've been saying 20 years for about 3 years now. So fast forward, nearly quarter of a century. I know it feels like it can't be right, but it is. And essentially, I've just found myself always coming back to training, professional development, personal development type stuff. And one of the things that I feel really strongly about, there's two things really. One of the things I feel really strongly about is if you're working with people, you have a duty really to turn up and deliver good quality support. So that comes in multiple different ways. The second thing is that you don't have to be super qualified. You don't have to have a degree necessarily to support people with some of the challenges that we see in everyday life. So that dual kind of focus, I guess, brings what I feel is quite a unique perspective into what is an ever challenging space. So predominantly I work within health and social care, but because I challenge mediocrity, then often I find myself attracting fellow rebels who also want to challenge some of the mediocrity in their industry as well. So that's kind of diversified it a little bit. But yeah, predominantly that health, social care sector, linking with homelessness, housing and criminal justice services.
Not in a very good state.
We do a lot of social impact research in the work that we do, and predominantly in Wales. I kind of caveat that, and there's lots of there's devolution of certain aspects, so some of it's devolved, some of it's not, so it makes it slightly more complicated. But there's some really good work. It's the system that's set up to fail, and I'm just going to say it, the arrogance. So this idea that, only one way of supporting people is the right way is a real challenge. And that sits on both ends. So if you've got lived experience and you're supporting people, your experience is going to bring empathy and compassion, but it doesn't mean it's right for everybody. And likewise, you might be, a clinical psychiatrist and have decades and decades of training and qualifications, but often that doesn't mean that you can engage and connect. So part of the work that we look at is how do we find that middle ground so that you can engage with people and also have the knowledge and expertise that you need as well.
That's where we sort of met. I think it was on Jude's post. I think it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And Jude Morrow, guys. And it for quite a while I've been talking about this kind of stuff and kind of ignored and silenced a bit. And then I get potentially why. And I think I'm actually quite pleased that it's now been talked about. I have been talking about it for a long time, which is frustrating when you haven't been listened to. And then certain other people talk about it. But I still was very, very shocked. So basically, Jude was saying that he felt that, and Matt Scutwell, I was on his podcast, he's in the neurodiversity field, was saying that, yes, it's all very well that you've got people that have got lived experience and they've got a lot of experience, but that's potentially not enough. You've got people that have got lived experience that have not necessarily got anything academic to back that up with, but they've also delivering training and they have no idea to deliver training either. And that's actually really, really dangerous, which is what he was saying. And I was quite, I was shocked but not surprised at the pushback from it, about the number of people saying that you shouldn't have to. And I say, but why shouldn't you have to? Why shouldn't you be doing the best? It's like you said, it's not about necessarily having degrees or whatever, but all I know is that it's about reaching a level, and it's about that standardization to say that the number of people I know that are trainers, and yes, it is what my business is, I train people to do it properly, is that I get absolute silence when I ask people out there, if you're a trainer and you're not qualified, why? Apparently there's no trainers out there that aren't qualified when I ask those questions. And I get why, because people feel quite threatened maybe, but I know that if they had to have it, because I know, and that's why I was sort of saying about the social care, health and social care sector, that I work across all sectors. Some sectors you have to have a qualification to teach it. Health and social care you don't. And so it's to no surprise then, most of the people I've taught aren't from the health and social care sector.
It's a double whammy for me, because by trade I'm a trainer, so Kimby and we predominantly help people step into their expertise through courses, programs, accreditations, that kind of thing. So for me, there's not only this, what I feel not enough expertise to teach, but also then they're throwing it together because they've been taught this is how we make money. So we're not doing it for the right reasons. And that's part of what we try and challenge. It's, yes, income is important. We all got a business because we need to earn money. I get that. It's not a dirty word. However, we're playing with people's lives. And I think it's the low standards that then tarnishes not only the industry and the profession, but it's actually really damaging not only to the people we're working with, but also to us. If we've got lived experience and we're not getting proper support, then like re-triggering and re-traumatization for ourselves, because we just don't know what we're stepping into as professionals.
I think it's interesting you said, because I think that a lot of people think that it is just about knowing your stuff. And I think that what came up from that whole conversation, from that post, was that when you're dealing with, I think what you were saying was, it was about coaches, I think, actually, as well.
I think so too,
but of course, that kind of goes across. As he said, if you've got people that are coaches, and I don't think, I might be wrong here, I don't think there's actually any qualification from my understanding. I don't think there is. They're going to be dealing with, I was diagnosed 4.5 years ago, and I've worked in mental health. I've got a psychology degree. I've done a lot. I know a lot. I think a lot, and I've worked my way through it. There's a lot of people though that it's not like that for them. So if you're coaching someone, you're potentially dealing with a lot, and if you're not equipped to deal with that because you've been there and done it yourself, that's yourself.
And that's likewise with those who do then have this kind of very medicalized model. I mean, addiction is one of those things that you can sit and you can talk about trauma-informed medical model, you can talk about social learning, nature nurture. It's one of those conversations that we don't even agree in the sector often about how it is. And I feel that the ADHD in particular is something that's having this kind of similar conversation. And I think we know from the spectrum of just ADHD, without bringing other aspects of neurodiversity in, but we know from that the way that the three of us, for example, might have or have not characteristics of it are going to be slightly different. So one of the struggles I have when we've just got this very medicalized model is you can have a diagnosis, but so what? You still got the characteristics. You still need to learn how to navigate life with what at time can be really challenging emotionally and practically with somebody who's got, and I haven't got a diagnosis, but I think most people who know me would say, it's probably there. I definitely have characteristics of it. Personally, I don't feel the need for a diagnosis, but that doesn't mean that I'm not having the same challenges that you might have with a diagnosis. And I think when we just sit on the medical modelization, modelization, I'm not sure that's a word, but the medical model of it, then we miss out that social aspect, which is probably what's causing people who are searching for a diagnosis more of the challenge than having a diagnosis or not.
Totally. I mean, I always say, yes, I did get one. My reason for I hadn't even contemplated that I was. It was just to do with really my son being listened to. And when I found out, I was like, whoa, yeah, okay.
It's like tick, tick.
And actually, you know, I know. I literally, I've worked with kids that have got it. I never even thought about it. But for me, it was. It's funny because I see a lot out there about with the neurodiversity, and a lot of stuff actually. You have to do it this way, and it's almost like them against us.
Yeah.
However, what I tend to do, and probably the same as you, is that when I'm teaching, I will say, I don't make a huge thing about it, but it's about, I always say to people, you know, when you're teaching, you've got to be aware, you know, quality and diversity. I said, but to be quite honest, every person in this room matters. So yes, legally, if you've got a disability, I have to be concerned, but I'm actually concerned about every one of you, whether you've got a diagnosis of anything. It doesn't actually really matter what it is. And I feel like it's strange because I think, again, I read someone's post and it was saying, are you too much all about your neurodiversity, as in everything is about that and you don't do anything else? And I seem to see an awful lot out there, and I think that's where what I try and get across to people is, I'm not I have got a PGCE. I actually didn't learn how to teach properly until I started teaching people how to teach. I started teaching people how to teach, that's how I learned that, you know, the penny dropped. But I think what people don't see is that it's about having that structure, and it's about standardisation, which is what I think the health and social care sector is massively lacking. And I think until that actually gets sorted, it's going to be the Wild West at best out there, because you're going to have some people that are doing it well. But then what does well mean? If you've got no standard, what's well?
Yeah, and we've just, so one of the contracts we've done in the last couple of years is rewrite the core standards for the drug and alcohol sector for Wales, and for on behalf of Welsh Government. And what was really interesting is the previous standards were very clunky, and they kind of weren't didn't really make sense. Yeah, whereas now we've broken them down into smaller kind of sections that. And one of the things we've had to add in is, you know, effective, compassionate, empathetic support. And I think that's part of the challenge, is often within competency frameworks. And I've reviewed the National Occupational Standards with Skills for Health and been around doing it for quite a while. And one of the things I would say is the competencies are always based on standards from an academic aspect, which is a really important part of it. But we forget then the human side of it. And a lot of the research we do means we speak to lots of people with lived experience, and they often say, well, yeah, I know my mental health worker or my drug and alcohol worker is qualified or trained, but they're still rude to me when I turn up. Or they still, aren't listening to me. So when we look at the core and strip it right back to what it means to be human, being respected, having dignity, feel like we've got choices, feel like we're listened to, all of those are core for any condition and any support services. And we don't often bring those and talk about those enough within that kind of
aspect. But this is something I know Marianne's sort of found a lot in terms of sort of comeback from people, especially on LinkedIn, which is that people say, well, I get good feedback on my training. I'm constantly being told that I'm really good. I've got great experience. I've been doing this for a number of years. People like me. I'm very empathetic, etc. All of those great things. The bit that they don't seem to hear is that I'm not saying that you shouldn't be all of those things. All of those things are really great, and we need all of those things, because my favorite saying is, I don't almost even don't like the term neurotypical and neurodiversity. People are messy is my term.
Yeah.
Right. So, but people are messy. We need people that understand people.
Yeah.
That's great. Or that are great with people. But at the same time, we need some benchmarking, right? Of what
totally.
what you don't know.
That's the
that's the crux of this, isn't it? Really, at the end of the day.
I don't think it's a surprise, given the way my brain works, whether you want to call that neurodiversity or not, is that so when I set up, I'd worked in health and social care for years and years and years. I worked in mental health, eating disorders, all sorts.
Yeah.
Then I did my PGCE, and then I was doing training and stuff like that. And then I set up, so I was doing the teacher training, and then I set up to do health and social care training. I'll never forget saying to my colleague, I taught him how to teach. He'd been teaching for years, and he said, I had been, but I realised I was winging it.
Yeah.
And he'd been teaching 18 years, far longer than I had. And I remember saying to him, bearing in mind I taught where I'd had criteria, so I was teaching actual qualifications, right?
Yeah.
I said to him, where is it? Where does it say what we have to teach? And he went, but it's not. And of course, be it the way my brain works, if it's not, I need to know. Because if I don't know, I never quite know if I've done it quite right. So I've always really struggled, and maybe it's not a surprise then, I don't really do so much of the health and social care training anymore. There's a number of reasons why. But I was a bit like, how do I know I don't know if I'm doing this right. Yes, people are liking my training. Yes, they say they're getting a lot from it, but I still don't actually know if I'm doing the right thing. Whereas when I do the teacher training, I've got criteria I work to. I do put my slant on it because I also don't think that the qualification is actually fully fit for purpose. But I put my own slant on it. So I don't think it's a surprise, therefore, because it is very woolly. So it's not a very technical word, but that's the word I'm going to use. It is very woolly because, as you say, Graham, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff out there. And even the neurodiversity training that I do, it's still, I'm left going, and that's why when I have the conversation with people, they say, can you do some training? And I say, because there isn't anything set out, I need to have the conversation with you about what the aim is and what the objectives are, which I'm pretty sure, Graham knows, I get on my soapbox about this, most people don't even know what an aim is and an objective, or even how to write one.
Yeah.
But they're great trainers.
Yeah, this is one of the things. It's really interesting. So we've got a framework that we use called SAILS, which is Safe and Inclusive Learning Spaces. And it's got 5 themes. And one of the first themes is learning framework. And that is learning outcomes, learning styles, and I know that it gets a bit poo-pooed, the learning styles, but the idea that we all learn differently. No, it shouldn't do. So it should. And I think this is when if we have too much academic input, then it's really easy for us to go, that's not valid anymore. But the reality is that I'm very visual, and if I'm just talked at, it's not for me. So we make sure that we've got, we talk about what that looks like as a trainer, as an educator. And so many people are kind of accidental educators, and they've just fallen into it, mainly because they're probably like us and just naturally good at training. But also those people who then, what I'm seeing now, especially in the digital space, is more and more people doing it because they've been told make passive income, or
totally. Oh my gosh.
And it's the wrong reason.
How many times I see people going, I've written a course on, and I'm like, no, you haven't. You haven't actually written a course.
Yeah, no, completely. And we talk about that. Our 5th theme in that is evidence of impact, and part of that is, what's the point in your learning space? What's the point? So what are you trying to achieve? And that doesn't have to be knowledge. It can be change of attitudes, and it can be, change of behaviors. But you've got to know what you're teaching to know whether you're doing a good job. And that doesn't just mean good testimonials. In my my
No,
view.
it's interesting because when I do the learning cycle, that interestingly, out of every bit, the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands I've taught, even people that have had a lot of experience will say, I didn't know that stuff. I've been training for a long time. And I said, but if you've never learned, it's the same. If you never learned how to build a wall, it's not to say that your wall won't be okay, but you've still not actually. So I say to people, one of the biggest things is that's fine so long as it's working for you. But what are you going to do when it goes wrong? How are you going to know that it went wrong? How are you going to deal with those situations? Because if you don't know, and a lot of that is, on the second day of what I do, I teach about the psychology of human behavior. How are you going to deal with a situation?
How do you deal with somebody who's arguing with you in training?
I would argue back, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be controversial about this.
Ooh.
Training in the main these days is sales. Sales is training, right? It's the same thing, right? Long time ago, in the galaxy far, far away, sales and training were very separate things. Okay, people expected to be sold to in a very stupid way, really. You had a product, and you people were quite happy to be advertised to.
Convinced. Yeah.
Well, no, just advertised to. Literally. I mean, if you go back and watch old adverts on TV compared with ones now, you laugh at them. You think they're really funny because they basically sort of tell you to buy the product.
Yeah, convinced though, isn't it?
They didn't have any kind of subtle nuances to them. They didn't have any kind of like emotional, journey with them. They didn't do any kind of storytelling or whatever. They literally went, Mrs. Jones needs cleaner clothes. Suds. I mean, it really was straightforward.
Black and white. Yeah.
Black and white, straightforward. It's kind of like, you need to wash your clothes, you need our soap powder. It was as simple as that. Nowadays, sometimes you watch adverts on TV and you go, what was that for?
Jaguar is a really classic example of that.
Yeah.
The new Jaguar rebrand is a really classic example of that. There wasn't a car in sight yet. Goodness me, the ripple effect it created was huge.
Clever. Yeah. You probably remember a long time ago a very controversial
don't age me now,
set of advertising, which was the United Colours of Benetton.
Yes.
When they used to, and they had like someone dying in a bed, and it was like, what is, they went from showing people in their clothes to like startling, and we've slowly but surely seen a real transition there. And salespeople have realized, and there's a lot of salespeople out there, salespeople have realized that training is sales, right? It is sales. It's part of that journey. I need to educate people. I need to, but this is part of the problem, right? Which is that what you've now got is a lot of salespeople have inhabited the training space. So whereas it used to be people were trained, people would sell. People would train, people would sell. And typically training people were much more, if you're going to put colours to it, training people were much more blue and green.
Yeah.
Whereas salespeople were always yellow, maybe a tinge of red as well. Okay. Now you've got a lot more yellow people doing training. Now, the mindset of anybody that's coming from sales is the end goal here is for me to sell. And as part of that, so when it comes to the feedback, when it comes to the reputation, the realization that this is great training or whatever, what people don't realize is that all the way through that process, they're thinking with that sales brain. So all the way through that process, what they're doing is they are trying, what they will build into their training is they will build sales into their training. All the way through the process, you will be told, I'm doing a good job here. haven't.
Yeah.
Now, didn't you
That's
all
so
enjoy?
interesting.
Didn't you all enjoy that bit? Yes, you did. I was really good at that bit, wasn't I? Yes, you did. Hands up in the room. Who feels that they've really learned something from that experience?
Yeah.
Now, if I do that confidently, and and I've got the confidence to kind of push that over to you, you're all going to sit there and go, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then you create that. They also know there's power in peer.
Likability. Right? If I always say to my trainers, if you can come across and you can engage your audience and they like you, you'll never get bad feedback. But that's not necessarily a good thing.
Doesn't mean to say it's great feedback.
And it doesn't. Yeah, exactly that. It doesn't mean to say you did a good job. But if you're looking for 100% of people said they love my training, you just have to be likable. You don't have to be good at your job. You don't have to be knowledgeable, and you can mess up multiple times. And that's damaging to the profession that they're teaching about. And
I think there's also a lot of people, you've got, it all seems rather blurred, and you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, and nobody else talks about this, and I sound really bitter when with that whole people writing courses or whatever they do. But there seems to be sort of a big, you've got coaches, then you've now got keynote speakers, you've got consultants, and I am, because that is what I do. Then you've got trainers. It all just seems as if, and I can't help but feel a bit dismayed, in all honesty, that it's not being listened to, but for a few. So when I saw that you agreed with me, I was like, yes, because it just feels as if everyone's sticking their head in the sand. And the minute I speak up about it, it's like, oh, here she goes again. And I think, well, yeah, here she does go again, actually, because I know that the people I teach, and I know that the people I teach, I don't just tick a box. I make a difference. I find out, and that's one of the other things. I find out what's their past, what's their, and I think that's why, interestingly, people that work in caring professions actually make some of the best trainers, because I don't have to, when we do the stuff on about the equality and diversity, and we do all that sort of stuff, it's in what they do anyway. And so it's a real shame that when those people aren't invested in, because you often will get people that academically maybe they've gone into health and social care, and academically haven't maybe done very well at school because the system didn't work for them. And that actually, if they were just invested in, not by doing it online, because for many of those people that doesn't work, if they actually invested in them, what a great way to keep somebody that's a really good member of staff, to actually promote them into being a trainer, but do it properly, and actually, so they're not just being shifted across, because then you find then they get shifted back into, 1 minute you're a trainer, the next minute we need you, so you can go back to doing that, not just to keep their hand in, but because, oh, well, we need you doing that now.
I think that links back to what Graham was saying about the sales, though. So, like, I worked for, so my previous role before Kimby was to specifically run the commercial arm of a training company within the health and social care sector. We do some training still within Kimby, but not masses. And part of, I think, the roles within health and social care is, as money is tight, and let's be fair, it's, it has been for a really long time, that this role of training becomes bolted on, and there's not the investment that it needs. So therefore we never have the evidence that academics need to be able to showcase why this is valuable and why it's needed. And then what happens is trainers get in the training room and they have to sell to go, look, 100% of people love my course, so therefore I must have to deliver this again. Please don't put me frontline anymore. So we're having to justify. So whether it's sales for money or whether it's sales for time, resources, energy, respect of the role, that sales is continuously in there.
But I'm often never even asked anything. So like I said, I don't really do it now. Trying to get the work became so difficult.
Yeah.
And at a silly price. That's the problem, because what you were having was, at the end of the day, I know my worth as well. And there's a lot of, there's two sides of it. You've got a lot of freelance trainers that have probably maybe earning more than they were if they employed, maybe. So they'll do it at rock bottom price. And I'm like, you're not actually helping the matter. You've then got a lot of agencies or whatever, you know, that's often what I ended up having to go through. And they were charging me out a lot. I was using my material and getting, quite frankly, not much money at all.
Yeah.
But what I found then was that the sad thing about all of it was that, so because I was part of the Care Connector network, part of the whole idea about that was to actually get both parties talking. So the providers, so the care providers and the care suppliers. So me being a care supplier, I would then say at the shows, well, okay, if you want training, where will you go for that? On the internet. So I said, okay, so I rock up and I do some training and you say, can we have you again? And I say, well, you can, but you're gonna have to book me through the agency.
Yeah.
Because that's how I said, I did actually in theory contact you 3 weeks ago, but nobody got back to me. And there is the problem. You don't know I exist and I can't get to you. And I think a lot of the problem is that particularly within the care sector, nobody actually knows what the standard, nobody knows what it is. So when they're looking at it being the cheapest, whether that's face-to-face or whether it's using an agency because that's who was at the top on Google, and that often I used to say to them, actually, if you dealt with someone like me, I can probably in that session, I get to know you, I'll get to know your workers, I can come in and do group supervision as well. People will tell trainers stuff that they won't tell managers.
Yeah.
You know, I'm open about it, but they will tell them stuff. And so actually in the end, I can do a lot more than just imparting that knowledge. If you tell me you've got a certain issue going on, whatever it is, although I might be in there to do moving and handling or dementia or whatever, actually I can cross over with things. But the issue you've got is I think the biggest problem is that you've got a lot of care providers who are in it for the money. And I think there's a lot out there that are. And there's a lot that are doing it because they absolutely love it. And they're ironically the ones that probably will invest in that good training. And so long as you don't have standards out there that you have to adhere to, you know, and I know many people say, well, when you've got qualifications and standards, that doesn't mean to say people are good. And I said, but it's no reason not to have them.
Yeah,
it's not any reason not to have them. You change, you'll agree, you will change the way things change. Like I said, I don't fully agree with the teacher. I don't like some of the criteria.
Yeah.
But change those things. Don't take away being qualified completely.
Yeah.
Change them.
And it's the standards, isn't it? I think that's you can have really great training and not necessarily have a qualification. So it's about the quality of the training, which is that ripple effect. So if you've got, you know, mediocre people supporting people who then go, I've been doing this for 2 years, I'm going to then become a trainer. And let's be fair, 2 years is probably very generous for some of those trainers out there. And then they go, I've got a son who's got ADHD and I know nothing else about it apart from maybe what I've read in a book. The reality is I wouldn't have wanted my midwife to, you know, help me give birth without qualified or without good training. I don't care whether she's had a baby or not. What I care about as a mum is sleepless nights and how do you get your baby to sleep. My health visitor may have brilliant knowledge, but she hasn't got that empathy and expertise. When we're looking at the wider sector and that mediocrity, that ripple effect just continues and continues and continues. Without people challenging that mediocrity, then the discussions don't even happen. And I think I've worked both regulated and unregulated organisations, and they're both as good and both as pants as one another. That individual, sadly, mostly it's personality led. But when you look at what regulations will do or having standards, then it just brings a benchmark that often is higher.
Totally. I think you've got to then, I think it's like I often say to people, but surely you'd want to be better than just whether it's a tick box or whatever. So surely if you knew that you could do what you were going to do well, I mean, I can do, and I do coaching, but I've often said, well, I'm not a coach because I haven't got a qualification. Little did I know that there wasn't really one actually, but with what I've done with my, PGCE and since, I do actually do coaching. And yet there's a whole bunch of other people out there doing it, that have got shiny advertising. And I think that's where the frustrating thing is, that I think people need to look a lot more, ask a lot more questions when they're say, like, buying that training. But also, even if you think about anybody becoming so like I said, I work in lots of different sectors, and so yes, people do in many of them, they have to. So if they're going to teach NEBOSH, let's just say, they've got to have the training qualification. But even within that, I get really frustrated because local authority, to me, 2 people recommended me to teach their staff to train. And I put a quote in, and I don't think I'm overly expensive at all. I think I'm fairly reasonable. To which both came back and said the budget, bearing in mind this is for a qualification, is £200 to £250 per person. And I said, my costs are 200. Before I open my mouth, my actual costs are £200 per person. So I know now they're going to go online, and one of them, I think they've got it for £50. And I said, that won't be a qualification. What they'll do is they'll say to you, once you've done it online, so you've taught yourself, they will then say, if you want the qualification, you're going to have to pay. They basically got you, if you see what I mean. And I worked out the other day that, so people will pay X amount for a coach, £1,800 an hour, let's just say. And I worked out with my little sums that to have me for 3 days to teach somebody for a qualification that they will get, £18.50 an hour. And that they'll bulk at that. And I'm like, you're actually getting something at the end of it from somebody who's qualified. So I know what I'm talking about. And I just think businesses need to start opening their eyes to realize that,
there's the issue. They're businesses. So
individuals often will pay and they won't think about it.
This is the problem. It comes down to perceived value within an organization. Where the revolution will come, because it will, right? Where the revolution has to come is that at the moment, what we know is that, because I do a lot of stuff on the sort of culture of work as well. We know that work in general isn't working. It doesn't work. It's broken. Particularly since COVID, particularly since, a lot of people reevaluated their lives and realized that actually we don't want to work in the way that we used to work. Right? Work now for a lot of businesses isn't working. And it's the thing that most businesses, senior management within businesses are really struggling with, is how do we give people an experience or get them, really fired up about what we're doing, when actually the culture of what we're doing, the way that we work, all of those things doesn't necessarily sit well with what people want. Right? So here's the rub. At the moment, the perceived value of training is far, far too good. Training is far, far too low. At the moment, companies know they need training, but they see it as a cost. They don't see it as the thing to focus on. They see, anything to do with sales, making more money, putting more money in. That's great, right? The only times that's an exception at the moment, and where it's easy to get, or easier to get training work, like you're doing, Marianne, is where somebody has to have it, right? Because when somebody had to have it
online, though, they're still going for the cheaper option.
Yes.
And then e-learning type online.
Absolutely, but
learning to teach how to teach from a computer.
But when people start to see the value of training and actually realize that this could save their business, this actually could enhance their business, and that they could actually make more money from having this kind of training, that's when it will happen. right?
And trainers need to adapt. So I think when you were saying, Marianne, about you're a coach, I've got a coach qualification. I am the world's worst coach because I'm far too opinionated and can't keep my opinions to myself. But as trainers, it's the tools. So we need to sit back and look at how we're selling actually to organizations, because typically I'm not brilliant at sales. I'm a bloody brilliant trainer, but I'm not brilliant at sales. And we've got to look and reflect and say, training is just one tool in the workforce talent development pool. And training is one part coaching, it's another part mentoring, it's another part reflective practice, is another part. If you want genuine good quality, and it doesn't always have to be about generating money, it can be bottom line productivity, absenteeism, those kind of things, then you can't just have a day's course, or you can't, you can.
It's got to have that sort of going through. And I think that when you've got that, interestingly, this morning, my post, it was looking at online training, and so many people, I've done polls on it before, most people don't want it. And you sort of think, so the work for, businesses will put that on because they say we've got no choice. But people they don't engage with it as well, not because they don't want to necessarily, it just doesn't, it doesn't work. And and actually, I brought up the subject of, if you're only going to give people the option to do it online and they have got a disability, it's not actually goes against the Equality Act. If you're not giving somebody the chance to learn in the way that works for them, nobody talks about this.
It was interesting that Charlotte mentioned absenteeism, actually, because what's a greater problem in the workplace at the moment than absenteeism? Presenteeism.
Yeah.
That's actually where training could really good training could really make a difference.
And when you see the penny drop with people, because you've done it well.
But I think that's the difference between good training. So one of the reasons I was a good trainer is not necessarily because of my knowledge level. It was the ability to pull out and draw out the knowledge in the room and make attitudinal changes. So I think that's part of the discussions we have with people, is we will create your workforce development strategy, no problems, but let's look at what you're prepared to change. And it's really interesting, Graham, you use the word revolution, because one of the things we're looking at for 2025 is this campaign around an excellence rebellion, and for people to exactly that. So for us to support people to become rebels in their space, to find their voice, to really be able to challenge that mediocrity, that poor practice, those low standards, and what that looks like. And some people will do it in a very quiet, one conversation, one training course at a time. Some of us might be, like those of us in the room right now, who are probably slightly more vocal and like a bit of anarchy, but for the right reasons. And there's an amazing book called The Professional Troublemaker, and it's based around racism, but the pretense of it is, if you're in a room and you're sat on your hands and you walk out of that room and you think, I should have said something, say it. So don't cause trouble for causing trouble's sake and for drama. But if you're somebody who is sick of seeing the mediocrity, who's fed up of the charlatans in your space, then stop sitting on your hands. You've got a voice, you've got expertise. You can.
I just wish people would open these though as well.
Say that again. Sorry.
I just wish that, I think people also need to start opening these as well. The people that are actually making the decisions about, let's just say, who to buy the training from. Because Graham knows, we've sat in numerous meetings, and some people, I had even someone say that they didn't feel that their trainers needed the training qualification because it wasn't really, it wasn't really it wasn't needed. I can't even think what the word was. And I thought, so
the taste of lemon sherbets.
So that the training qualification isn't going to be suitable for their trainers because it wasn't needed, or it wasn't. And I thought, how can you? This person wasn't actually a qualified. They weren't a trainer. So you've got training managers. That's the problem, making decisions about training that have absolutely no idea about it. And I thought, wow.
That's why we do a lot of work with accreditation, because I talk a lot about accreditation support and getting courses accredited, because people will go, oh, yeah, it's a badge, it's a quality stamp. Now, there's a whole, probably have no time for this, but there's a whole conversation around
Get it on again, it's all right.
Well, the rogue awarding bodies, and that's a whole different thing we could be chatting about. So who's quality assurance? The quality assurers is my question to that. And we do a lot of work. I'm a qualified quality assurer and IV and that kind of thing. And I also challenge the levels of standardization within that space. And I think, but one of the things that accreditation will do is a good quality awarding body will make you say, what do I know about a trainer? What's the market need? And what do I know about filling the market need? So one of the reasons we like to talk and help people get accreditation, not necessarily a qualification, and I put my hands up, we help people become the awarding body. So we've just worked with the Mental Health and Wellbeing show to create a quality mark. But they've worked with me as I'm going to call myself an expert because I'm an expert in that space, even though they have training backgrounds. So when you buy into quality assurance, and it's like John Lewis, if you go into John Lewis, you go into a pound shop, you get a Bic pen and it's £5 in John Lewis, £1 in the pound shop. I'm always going to buy the pound Bic pen. If I want a fountain pen or a beautifully crafted pen that I'm going to give as a gift, I ain't going to B&M. Yeah,
no, you're definitely
but
not.
The thing is, I mean, I did my it was only when I did my IQA qualification that I fully, because I've got my own centre, I fully understood why I was being asked to do those things. Even though I rolled my eyes at times, and I was like, "Oh, I know I'm doing it."
Oh, I hate that qualification.
I hated it too. But it was the best thing I ever did. But I've got my EQA visit coming up, the external one. And I know that because I know how to do it properly, and I have done things properly, because I know why to do it properly, because I learned that there's going to be no problems. There's going to be no problems because I'm doing it right. And surely people should be doing it right because it's the right thing to do.
100%.
Absolutely. We're out of time. We're out of time. And I just need to give a quick plug because you talked about that. You know, we talked about the revolution, we talked about excellence, and we talked about getting people together that actually do believe in this kind of manifesto as well. That's exactly what we're doing over at A Better Way of Life. So there we are. We have our club. You can join it. It's £10 a month. It's not a lot of money, but if you want to be in a online space where you can get together with other people that really do care about caring, to be honest, and doing things properly, then that's a thing you can join, so that we can all kind of help each other push the agenda. And I'll leave you with a little book title as well. This is I always find a music book. I think most business books are a load of, but music books quite often say it as it should be. And here's a great title from someone that has always their whole life talked about keeping it real. And not just doing it the way that everybody else does it, because that really sucks. And this is don't suck, don't die giving up. That's your manifesto for this week. Don't suck at doing it, do it properly.
Exactly, that's it. If you're going to do it well.
Yeah, if you're going to do it well. Otherwise, you might as well give up.
Or as our strapline is, make excellence a habit.
There you go. Oh, all excellence together. Charlotte, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much.
I always thought the what we're going to call ourselves,
fellow rebels.
I always thought the rebels in the conversation.
There we go. Folks, hope you've enjoyed this. Hope it's woken up the brain cells today. If it has, if it's sparked of interest at all, come along, join the club. That would be great. If you can't afford to do that, just say hi anyway, and let us know what you think. We want everybody to come along and take part in all of this. We will be back same time, same place next week with more of the same. Until then, bye for now.